Triumph Speed Triple RS 2025, the three-cylinder rocket from England in our intensive test. We spent 2 days on the racetrack and 2 days on country roads, and now we've got a lot to tell you about it. Triumph has done a bit of fine-tuning for the 2025 model year. The engine has gained 3 horsepower, and they somehow managed to find another 3 Newton meters of torque as well. They played around a little with the ergonomics. The handlebar is now wider and higher, and they've put in a new suspension system. This one's now equipped with the 3rd generation of the Öhlins Smart EC. And overall, if you let your gaze wander across the bike, you'll spot a few small but refined tweaks. And how that all plays out in real-world use, and whether you can actually feel that progress again in 2025, that's exactly what we're going to get to the bottom of. And of course, I wasn't out there on my own. Joining me was 3-time IDM champion Martin Bauer, Lena Kemmer, up-and-coming young racer from Austria competing in the Women's World Championship. Our sporty all-rounder, Philipp Bethner from the 1000 PS editorial team was there too. And then there's me, you know who I am, Max, yours truly. I was involved as well, naturally. And so we've now got a lot to share with you. Let's get straight into the first category. Here we go. The 3-cylinder engine on the country road. That's just perfectly placed. You get a smooth running character, gentle throttle response, and from mid-revs onward, that's where the music really starts to play. From around 5,000 or 6,000 RPM, there's real fire, proper torque kicks in, and no matter what situation you're in, when you twist the throttle on this triple, the whole thing just surges forward. It's absolutely fantastic on the country road. And for me, that's exactly what sets a big displacement engine apart. This is, after all, a 1,200 cubic centimeter engine, and it manages to be both refined and smooth to ride, and at the same time has that eagerness to rev up top. Honestly, you've got to hand it to them. Compliments to the engineers over in Hinckley. They've done a brilliant job here. And something else worth mentioning, this smoothness. You can actually tootle through a town in 5th gear at 45, 50 kilometers an hour, and it just glides along effortlessly. You can ride it in a really relaxed, composed way, and then as soon as you knock down 2 gears on your way out of town using the beautifully working quick shifter, bam! It kicks off like a proper fireworks show. So yeah, an absolutely superb impression here from the triple engine.
I have to say, I really like this. I'm a huge fan of 3-cylinder engines because for me, they somehow combine the best of both worlds. You get the smoothness and refinement you'd expect from a 4-cylinder engine, but you also get that punch from down low, like you know it from a V-twin or generally from V-type engines. And thanks to this 3-cylinder layout, where the cylinders are placed side by side, but there are still only 3 and not 4, the engine stays relatively compact. That means the engine isn't too wide, not quite as narrow as a V4 maybe, but definitely narrower than a traditional 4-cylinder that's mounted transversely. And the 3-cylinder has no problem at all with you going full throttle straight from idle. It pulls away from the bottom super smoothly without any jerking or stuttering. That makes the whole thing incredibly fluid and soft. And the performance, the kind of thrust it delivers, it's genuinely impressive. We're looking at just over 180 horsepower with this engine, although that does only really come in at the higher revs. But the torque curve, you've got to say, is generally really good with these 3-cylinder engines. It's always been that way, and Triumph has always done a great job making them rideable and easy to modulate. That's exactly what I want in a street fighter or a naked bike, to be honest. I want that low-end grunt, a smooth running character, even at low revs, because that's exactly the rev range where I spend most of my time, and it works really well on this bike. At the same time, it still has that willingness to rev. It's not like a V-twin that kind of starts to run out of steam up top. Here, it actually leans more in the direction of a 4-cylinder, where it just keeps pulling all the way up. But compared to a typical 4-cylinder engine, The sound is a bit more gutsy and more muscular. It's got a deeper, more aggressive tone to it. What you might notice a little bit, though, is a slight level of vibration in certain RPM ranges, but it's not bothersome. In fact, I think it kind of adds to the character. And the overall sound that the engine puts out is deep and sonorous. It's got real presence to it. I really like that. And I honestly think that this kind of 3-cylinder power plant fits perfectly into a naked bike like this.
For me, the engine in the Speed Triple RS is probably the best engine you can have for riding on country roads. The 3-cylinder has fantastic smoothness. It's got punch down low, punch in the middle, and punch up top. The power this bike delivers is absolutely beyond question. And for riding on the road, it's more than enough, 3 times over. For me, it's just an absolutely fantastic engine, because it's super easy to modulate and it doesn't overwhelm you, even if at some point you do get a bit heavy on the throttle.
When it comes to the suspension, Triumph didn't have to be asked twice. They've, as usual, reached straight for the top shelf. They fitted Öhlins components here. And of course, the electronics lend a hand depending on the riding situation. In some cases, the system adjusts everything automatically based on the bike's dynamics, or if the rider prefers, you can stick with fixed preset configurations. That means as a rider, I can manually set the rebound and compression damping to a specific value, just like I know it from a conventional manual suspension setup. In terms of tuning, it definitely leans a bit towards the sporty side, but without completely sacrificing comfort. So we can ride this bike on all sorts of different roads without any problem. It doesn't get overly harsh or struggle to soak up bumps. You get a nice level of ride comfort, and at the same time, it gives you really good potential to throw the thing properly into corners. And that setup definitely plays a positive role here. I've got to say, it really impressed me over the course of the whole day. It handled everything we threw at it without missing a beat.
There's really not much to criticize here. It just works. It hits, in my opinion, a fantastic sweet spot between comfort and sporty firmness, if that's what you want. You get on, you ride, and I think you get a lot of feedback, both from the front and the rear. I honestly have to say, maybe it's down to my own riding skills, but trying to push this suspension to its limits on the road, I just can't do it. And that actually gives me a really good feeling, because I know this bike can do more than I can, just gives you pure confidence.
The suspension on the Triumph really convinced me. It wasn't too hard and it wasn't too soft either. It's just very pleasant to ride. It pretty much absorbs all the bumps completely, even in corners and so on. You never get the feeling that you're losing grip or anything like that. It all works really well. And as a rider, it really gives you a solid sense of confidence.
I just really enjoy sitting in the saddle of the Speed Triple 1200 RS. I'm 1.85 meters tall and I just have enough space everywhere. I don't feel cramped, I don't feel too big or too small. It just feels like this bike was made for me. I've got pretty average proportions. And you can see it here. I've got plenty of room, even with the exhaust on the right side. I can place my foot wherever I want without my boot hitting the exhaust. And what I really like in particular is the handlebar. I think you sit quite upright here, but the handlebar is nice and wide, which means you can maneuver the bike really well, even in tight corners or at low speeds. And still, even in faster corners or at higher speeds, I never get the feeling that I'm lacking any front-end feedback. Quite the opposite, actually. I feel really connected to the front, and it even gives me the impression that it's at its most agile. And I just love that when a bike feels agile but still has a solid sense of stability underneath. And that's exactly what you get here. And like I said, with this kind of ergonomics, I find it easy to ride at a good pace all day long.
When I swing my 1.90 meters onto the saddle, I immediately notice this is, at least for my size and how it feels to me, the most comfortable bike in the test field of our 4 different hyper-nakeds. I've got a comparatively relaxed knee angle, the handlebar is also positioned relatively high, and still, I don't feel like I'm missing out on any sportiness. It's fantastic how much front-end feel you get with the Triumph. Once you're dialed in with the bike, you build up real trust in it. You get a great sense of what the front wheel is doing. And in my opinion, that's definitely thanks in part to the brilliant Öhlins suspension that's packed into this thing. What I also find absolutely amazing is this massive handlebar stem. I think it might be the widest handlebar in the whole test group. I didn't pull out the measuring tape, but just going by feel, it's seriously impressive how precisely you can steer the Triumph into curves with this wide handlebar. But really, we're less in the territory of ride feel here and more in the realm of ergonomics. And in that area, I have to give Triumph a lot of credit. For example, they made not only the brake lever adjustable, but also the clutch lever. And that's something many of the other bikes in our test don't offer. Even some of the more expensive bikes skip that. So in terms of value for money, Triumph really pays attention to the details and the ergonomic details too, like the stylish bar end mirrors, for instance. Not only do they look great, but they also offer a really good view, so you're not sacrificing ergonomics for looks. Yeah, the overall package here just works. And because of that, I've got to hand out some serious praise for this triple from England. And I think even shorter riders will benefit from how incredibly narrow this waist is. In my opinion, it's also the slimmest bike in the lineup. The foot pegs are positioned very close to the frame, very close to the center of the bike. And this narrow section at the tank, super slim. I can really wrap my legs around the bike well. And even when I start riding in a sportier style, it's honestly just amazing. No matter what the situation, I always find a great position on this bike.
Now, combined with the triple cylinder engine, which is built relatively narrow, we also have a correspondingly slim crankshaft. It doesn't act like some giant balancing rod or stabilizer bar. It still feels pretty light in terms of handling. And I think that's really something to highlight positively on the Triumph. It's a bike that can make a lot of different riders happy because on the one hand, it still handles really well and remains agile. But on the other hand, it also brings a sense of calm and stability, especially in faster sections where you can just carve through with confidence, even when the lean angle gets steep and you're still accelerating. That's often the tricky part with naked bikes, as you might have noticed too. This is usually where the wheat gets separated from the chaff. And Triumph has absolutely gone in the right direction here. They've nailed both sides of the equation. You don't just get great stability, you also get really solid handling. We rode through some very tight hairpins earlier, the kind where you're almost hitting the steering stop just to get around. And even in those situations, there were no issues at all. So yeah, on that front, top marks. There's really something here for everyone.
For me, this motorcycle honestly feels like it's controlled by thought. I get on it and the handling is exactly the way I expect it to be. It has this mix of light-footedness and stability that hits the sweet spot for me. I can ride it fast, I can ride it slow, I can take tight corners, I can take wide ones, and it always feels the same to me. It just feels neutral. The bike communicates with me. I get on, I feel at home straight away because it's just such a totally normal and easy to ride motorcycle, for me at least.
The electronics on the Speed Triple RS have been tweaked just a little bit for 2025. They've tried to tone down and reduce some of the animations in the display. But honestly, for me, there's still this small downside that's been around for a few years now. It's slow, it's laggy, as people like to say. You try to enter a command, and there's just this noticeable delay in the display's response. Personally, I think they could get rid of all the animations in the interface entirely. I wouldn't miss them. Maybe that would even speed things up a bit more. But enough complaining, let's quickly talk about the overall control layout and the range of electronics on board. And here, of course, we've got everything you'd expect from a bike in the year 2025. Pretty much everything the market currently offers is included here. Lean angle sensitive ABS, lean angle sensitive traction control. Yep, all of that is built in. And the individual ride modes are customizable, of course. I especially played around with the settings in track mode, throttle response, engine braking, even the ABS behavior. I really liked how adjustable everything is. And when it comes to the suspension, which is also electronically adjustable on the Triumph, you've got all the options at your fingertips. Brake support, cornering support, acceleration behavior. You can set up the bike however you like, depending on your riding situation. Whether you want more comfort or more sportiness from the suspension, it's all possible. That said, the preset ride modes are also really solid. Out on the road, I was riding in the softest setup, and that worked great for me. We had all kinds of surfaces, some good asphalt, some pretty rough stuff, and the automatic mode that came pre-configured handled it all really well.
You can group all the various rider aid settings into different ride modes so that you can access them quickly at the push of a button without having to dive into the menus on the display every time. But there's a small criticism I have here. I'm not really one of those young dynamic riders anymore, more of the older, more settled kind. And I find the menu structure a bit complicated to operate. We've had a lot of bikes in our test program where you sometimes have to turn certain things on or off in a short amount of time. And on this bike, it's just a bit more fiddly. So it definitely takes some getting used to. I do think that if you're the owner of a bike like this and you take the time to learn it, it becomes much easier because then you already know where to find everything. While we are on the topic of electronics, of course, there's also a quick shifter on board and it's up to the latest standard. That means I can shift in practically any situation, regardless of whether the throttle is open or closed. I don't have to roll off the gas to downshift. I can even do it under acceleration. And that's a very nice feature, especially when overtaking, where you might want to knock it down a gear quickly without closing the throttle. So yeah, I have to say, in my opinion, the electronics are very well implemented, including the rider aids. The way the intervention works is smooth and subtle. It doesn't interfere in any massive or abrupt way. We've got the braking components and system here from Brembo, and as we all know, that's generally not bad hardware at all. Same goes here. We're working with 320mm discs in combination with the Stylmark calipers from Brembo, and it really works beautifully. We've also got steel braided brake lines running straight down to the calipers, which gives you a really solid pressure point, and you can definitely feel that. Despite the ABS that's built in here, you still get great feedback. There's a lot of feel for the tires and for the deceleration in general. The braking performance is genuinely impressive. You get excellent stopping power, even with relatively little hand pressure, without it ever feeling like it could overwhelm anyone. The more sporty riders among you will enjoy the strong initial bite of the brakes, but even beginners won't feel out of their depth with this setup. There's no constant fear of over-braking the front wheel, which, thanks to the really well-functioning ABS, isn't something you'd be able to do anyway. But beyond that, the way the brakes behave gives you a lot of confidence. And even when it comes to the BrakeMaster cylinder, Triumph is still relying on Brembo. And that's an area where there's been a lot of development recently. You've got plenty of adjustment options here. You can change the ratio between the pivot point of the lever and the amount of force acting on the piston in the master cylinder, meaning you can decide whether you want lower hand pressure with a slightly softer pressure point or the opposite. That's all adjustable. At the same time, you can also adjust the lever reach, so how far the lever sits from the grip to accommodate different finger lengths. So yeah, even here you've got all the options to fine-tune the setup exactly to your personal preferences.
After the country road action, we've now arrived at the Slovakiaing, part 2 of our test, and we're dealing with changing conditions. It's a bit windy, and there's an occasional shower passing through. I hope it stays sunny for us. Let's take a quick look. What do we have for asphalt temperature? Yeah, 28.5, 29 degrees. Perfect. We also brought tire warmers, stands, pit carpet, everything you need for a serious attack on the racetrack. And now I'm hoping we can give you a solid insight and deliver proper test results in the sporty extreme range. Let's also take a quick look at our gear. You might have noticed that our test crew was all wearing Nex helmets, specifically the XR3R model. That's the sportiest helmet in the Nex portfolio. It's made with a carbon shell, pleasantly lightweight, 1,350 grams in size medium. And what I personally really liked was the great aerodynamics. With that additional spoiler element on the back, color matched to the visor, it really looks the part too. Visually, it's a real eye-catcher. Very classy and high-quality finish. The ventilation also impressed us. Even on the racetrack, our heads stayed cool. You can adjust it easily using the openings on the forehead, top of the head and chin area. That all worked great. And what was also really nice was the snug, sporty fit. especially for track riding, for sporty riding in general. It's truly a very exciting product. We really enjoyed it.
With the 3-cylinder engine, we've got a very unpretentious power plant, one that delivers usable power across a wide range. Up top, there's enough punch that you can easily keep up with the strongest motorcycles. And down low, it pulls nicely with plenty of torque. So even for a less experienced rider, this bike is very manageable on the racetrack from an engine standpoint. There are hardly any vibrations. It's a flawless engine. And because it's a straight 3, it's not overly wide either. We're looking at similar dimensions to a V4 in terms of overall engine width, and that puts it at a really good level. The 3-cylinder engine is relatively tall though compared to, say, a V4, which means we're dealing with a slightly higher center of gravity in this bike compared to some others. And that naturally leads to a different kind of handling dynamic. Especially under full acceleration, that high center of gravity tends to lift the front end relatively early. And under braking, the rear also wants to lift fairly soon. So you lose a bit of that precision you'd like to have, particularly when you're diving into fast corners. You find yourself missing some of the stability you'd want in that scenario. As strong as the bike is on the road, it does show a few minor weaknesses on the racetrack, but that shouldn't be taken too negatively. It still performs very well. Even for a fast rider, this bike is absolutely enough to have a great time. And for a slower rider, it's really forgiving and easygoing because it simply does everything you expect it to do. Maybe not quite to the absolute limit of what you'd want on a racetrack, sure, but that's a small compromise. Overall, the concept still works well on the track.
The steering head is mounted relatively high, which means it takes a bit of effort to really tuck in tightly. And with that wide handlebar, you're quite stretched out over the front. But overall, it's still super suitable for track days. I have to say, for me, the Speed Triple makes for a relaxed experience out on the racetrack. If you're not trying to squeeze out the last 10% and are okay with taking things a bit more relaxed, then it's truly a joy to ride this thing. And the really sporty guys, the ones who are out at track days all the time, they can always think about whether they want to park something a bit more hardcore in the garage. But for me, this balance, this fine line in the development, man, that's always something I truly admire. When someone manages to build a comfortable, awesome, well-performing road bike that gives me all the comforts like cruise control and so on, and then it still works fantastically well on a racetrack. That's just brilliant. It's really awesome. There's hardly anything I could criticize here. Also, the Triple, just to touch on the engine one more time, it responds to throttle input incredibly smoothly. I can control how much power I want to send to the rear wheel very precisely with the throttle hand. And when you think about how lively this engine is, remember we're talking about a 1200cc unit here, and yet it screams up through the rev range and still delivers plenty of power up top. This rev happiness combined with the refinement the engine brings, that's just something really special for me. I've always been a fan of 3-cylinder engines, and this one just confirms it again. I'm really trying hard here to find some downsides. But honestly, aside from that ultimate performance limit and maybe the expectations you bring to a purebred track machine, there's not much to criticize. This bike delivers a fantastic overall experience. Alright folks, I hope you enjoyed our video and that you picked up a few insights from all these impressions both on the racetrack and on the road. And of course, I also hope you liked the video. If you did, feel free to give us a thumbs up and leave your feedback down in the comments. Was there anything missing? Should we polish the way we test a bit more? Should we be more critical? I'm always happy to hear your feedback, so go ahead and drop it below. And of course, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything. There are a lot more video segments coming out of this whole testing process. And with that, I don't think there's much left to say, except see you next time. Take care and bye for now.